10 strange mysteries from around the world that are still unsolved. Many individuals around the world still find it interesting to talk about anything that cannot be explained. The peculiar nature of some mysteries, however, makes them more intriguing than the others. Number 10. The Dwarf Village in China. In general, villages are not odd places. China's villages are likewise not unusual. In this nation, there are numerous distant areas, but one sticks out. Experts and scientists are quite curious about the people who live in Yangtze, which is a province in Sichuan. The cause? The community has just 80 people living there, and nearly half of them are dwarfs. When they were adults, some of the affected women gave birth to children who were also only about 1 meter, 3 feet, tall. Since the Chinese government has never permitted tourists to enter the village, a number of urban legends have naturally developed around the tale. According to legend, the locals began to believe they were cursed as a result of their ancestors' resentment over improper funerals and began to feel as though dark forces had entered their homes. Others, it seems, think the issue is being caused by a turtle. After some of the communities prepared and consumed a black turtle, Yangtze began to experience the peculiar illness. However, it appears that the people are finally recovering from the illness after all this time. It appears that the younger generation has been observed. Number 9. Dorothy Eady and Oum Seti. Like any other toddler, Dorothy Eady was a young child. She was a delight to her adoring parents and spent the day running, playing, and laughing. Then the unimaginable took place. When Dorothy tripped and fell one morning at her house in London, she immediately rushed down the stairs. The 3-year toddler, Dorothy Eady, was a young child. She was a delight to her adoring parents and spent the day running, playing, and laughing. Then the unimaginable took place. When Dorothy tripped and fell one morning at her house in London, she immediately rushed down the stairs. The 3-year-old's condition was so terrible that he was declared dead right away. Dorothy then experienced the most unexpected event. She awoke. Her parents had their lovely daughter back for another 4 years. But everything changed in 1908. Dorothy's parents saw their daughter acting abnormally for the first time when visiting the British Museum on an unusual outing. They entered the museum's Egyptian area, and Dorothy was immediately entranced. She spent a significant amount of time with a glass-enclosed mummy and refused to leave with her parents because she couldn't get enough of the treasures. Even her parents saw her chasing after the sculptures and kissing their feet. Following this episode, things started to get worse. In a nearly despondent state, Dorothy would linger over images of ancient Egypt, adamant that the nation was her home and that she must go back there. She was particularly pleased one day when she saw a photograph of the Temple of Seti I at Abydos. She shouted that this was her former home as she sprinted to her father. Before she found the image of the temple, Dorothy experienced nightmares in which she saw the buildings and foliage of ancient Egypt. As her interest in Egypt grew, she joined study groups to learn more about reincarnation and spirituality. After getting married to an Egyptian man, she finally moved to Cairo, where she had a son she named Seti. Her new name would be Oum Seti. Oum's union didn't last long. Her nightly practice involved falling into a trance and writing illogical hieroglyphics about her spirit guide, which terrified her husband to death. She eventually wrote about Oum's life in ancient Egypt for about 70 pages total. She had a kid with Pharaoh Seti at the young age of 14, according to the report, and she served as a priestess at the Qam el-Sultan temple. However, she committed suicide to spare the pharaoh from being punished for breaking a priestess vow by losing her virginity. Aside from descriptions of mystical contacts with Seti, the hieroglyphics also included plans for a reunion with him in the Egyptian underworld. Before Oum Seti assisted archaeologists in pinpointing the precise location of the temple garden, many people dismissed this incredible tale as the ramblings of a lunatic. She also showed them a hidden tunnel on the temple's north side. After spending the remainder of her days at the Temple of Abydos, Oum Seti passed away in 1981. Many doubters wonder if Dorothy Eady was, in fact, the reincarnation of the ancient Egypt priestess Seti, because no logical explanation has been provided for her recollections, dreams, or knowledge of Egypt. Number 8. Francis Levy's handprint. In the 1920s, Francis Levy was a devoted firefighter. His co-workers admired him, and he enjoyed his job. He was a pleasant man who was always willing to lend a hand and a smile. Francis's co-workers noticed a shift in his temperament on April 18, 1924. He was no longer smiling or speaking. Instead, he was a grunting man wiping a huge window at the Chicago Fire Department. Levy abruptly announced after a short period of time that he had a peculiar sense, one that he might pass away that same day. The phone rang at that same time, breaking the ominous mood the fireman's comments had created. There was no time to waste when a fire broke out at a structure quite a distance from the fire department. Francis Levy and his fellow firefighters arrived on the site quickly, evaluated the situation, and provided assistance to people stranded on the upper stories. Everything appeared to be in place for the building's evacuation of everyone. Then, all of a sudden, the building's bottom portion was engulfed in flames, and the roof collapsed. As soon as this occurred, the walls collapsed, trapping numerous people including Levy under the debris. Levy's ominous prophecy came to pass. That day, while attempting to help others, he lost his life. His co-workers sat at the firehouse the following day, contemplating the events of the day before as they attempted to cope with the death of Levy. They were startled to notice an unusual object on one of the windows. The glass appeared to have a handprint that had been smudged. Strangely, Francis Levy had been busy washing the identical window the day before. The print resisted being removed after repeated cleanings by the firemen. Despite attempts to erase the handprint using chemicals over a long period of time, it remained on the window. The unusual enigma persisted unexplained but was abruptly put to rest in 1944 when a newspaper boy hurled a piece of paper against the glass, breaking it into pieces. Number 7. Jeanette De Palma. A dog brought something incredibly weird to his owner's back door in 1972. In Springfield, New Jersey, he had located a nearly totally decayed human forearm on a cliff top and hauled it back to its owner, who discovered what it was with great astonishment. The man called the police, who conducted a quick search before discovering the arm's original body. The remains of Jeanette De Palma, who had been missing for 6 weeks, were identified. Along with her decomposing remains, they also discovered some weird things on the ground nearby. There were rumors that the girl had been sacrificed by a local coven of witches. Others said she was killed by Satanists for occult ritual purposes. The murder's oddest aspect, though, was that no one dared talk about it as a planned piece of the tragedy that was being prepared. Residents of the region have remained silent about what they believe happened for more than 30 years. Nobody who was questioned, including the neighborhood police force, agreed to have their true names published. The case's leads did not come in the typical way. People sent in anonymous letters that did not include their names or addresses. One of the letters claimed that logs had been placed around Jeanette's body and that its author was unable to reveal his identity for a number of reasons that he was also unable to reveal. Another anonymous author claimed to have knowledge of a local witch coven that planned to kill a child on Halloween. When the author was a young child, she recalled being scared to go trick-or-treating on Halloween. Another letter claimed that De Palma knew the author's mother and that they were roughly the same age in 1972. In addition, animals were referenced in this letter as having been killed and then strung up in trees. Witchcraft or Satanism were mentioned in every message. De Palma was a highly Christian girl who wouldn't get involved with demonic rituals, one of them said. But the author also notes that when Jeanette De Palma got older, she started acting a little crazy. After Jeanette De Palma's body was discovered, the murder was widely reported for almost 2 weeks before a total hush began and persisted. Her killer has never been found. Number 6. The Toxic Lady. One of the most dramatic and mysterious medical case studies of recent decades is the death of Gloria Ramirez. The 31-year-old woman was taken by ambulance to a hospital in California in 1994. Several members of the medical personnel who had contact with her within hours all had serious illnesses. Many required hospitalization. The case of the toxic lady, as she is known in the media, is still under discussion in the scientific world. However, other explanations have been advanced throughout time. Ramirez was transported to the hospital, where she experienced a heart arrest after arriving. Ramirez was receiving treatment for late-stage cervical cancer at the time. When a nurse performed a regular blood test on the patient, things took an interesting turn. A strong ammonia odor was said to have started to pervade the room shortly after the blood was drawn. The blood sample also developed an odd look, as though it contained white crystals, which the doctors also noticed. Some members of the medical team began to feel quite ill as these strange circumstances developed, exhibiting a variety of symptoms such as fainting, convulsions, breathing difficulties, and vomiting. Depending on the report, there could be as few as 6 or as many as 23 affected individuals. The hospital made the decision to evacuate its emergency room around 8:30 that evening, treating patients in the parking lot while personnel in hazmat suits analyzed the air in the emergency room. Later that night, Ramirez passed away. The medical staff's unexplained ailment, however, remained a mystery. According to early media reports, the toxic gases released from the dying woman's body poisoned the nurses and doctors. Ramirez's family asserted that it was a cover-up intended to conceal that the hospital mishandled her care. Others asserted that it was just an example of widespread hysteria. Ramirez's autopsies and the hospital's investigations did little to dispel the uncertainty, finding no signs of organophosphates or other dubious substances. It appears that the case will go unresolved for the time being. Number 5. D.B. Cooper. The most notorious skyjacking in history took place on the afternoon of November 24, 1971, in Portland, Oregon, when a middle-aged man paid cash for a ticket on Flight 305 headed to Seattle. He used the alias Dan Cooper to purchase the ticket. The suspect was later given the incorrect name D.B. Cooper by a reporter. Cooper asked for a bourbon and soda when the plane was about 1/3 full and was about to take off. He ordered a drink and delivered a handwritten letter to the flight attendant. She needed to read the memo. Cooper politely advised her, "I've got a bomb." Cooper handed her his request, $200,000 in negotiable American currency, for parachutes, and a refueling truck on the Seattle runway, after showing her the bomb in a briefcase. For 2 hours, the plane circled Puget Sound so that officials could prepare the parachutes and other requirements. Later that evening, when the plane landed in Seattle, the 35 passengers departed, leaving several of the flight crew behind. Most of the passengers were unaware that a skyjacking was taking place. In order to deter prospective snipers, Cooper waited on the runway for about 2 hours with the cabin shades drawn. For civilian parachutes and $200,000, about $1.3 million today, in unmarked $20 notes, whose serial numbers had been photographed by the FBI, were provided by the authorities to track them. The aircraft subsequently took off from Mexico City, with a fuel stop scheduled at the airport in Reno, Nevada. Cooper, the 2 parachutes, and the cash were not present when the aircraft touched down in Reno. Near the Oregon-Washington state line, most likely, is where Cooper leaped from the aircraft. The FBI launched one of the most extensive manhunts in modern history almost immediately, which involved hundreds of agents and lasted for 4.5 decades. Many people think Cooper perished in the jump. In February 1980, a little child camping close to Vancouver, Washington, found numerous packets of the counterfeit money. Scientific examination indicates that the bills were most likely buried there in the spring or summer after Cooper's jump. This makes it uncertain whether Cooper will live through this time and where he will be. Did he genuinely pull off one of the largest heists in history, or did he perish trying? Number 4. Le Loyen. In the western Swiss woods, something sinister is happening. The area appears to be haunted by a figure wearing a gas mask over his face and a military outfit. Locals who live close to these woods have reported seeing the man take the same path every day for more than 10 years. He has been given the moniker Le Loyen, and they loathe him. He doesn't talk, and when he comes across someone, he just stares at them before walking away silently. A photographer who attempted to capture a photo of the enigmatic figure estimated his height to be close to 2 meters, 6'6". Even though the man doesn't appear to be dangerous in any way, kids are no longer allowed to play in these woods because they are too afraid. He was slowly traveling down a route in the woods when someone noticed him carrying what appeared to be flowers. The local authorities claim that because the man is not trespassing and has committed no crimes, nothing can be done to persuade him to leave the woods. A note stating that he was leaving because the risk of a quest for the beast was too large was once discovered in the woods with his clothes. The man's residence, the reason he wears a gas mask, and the reason he is silent are all unknown. According to several beliefs, he might be mentally unstable or suffer from a skin condition that would make him reluctant to let anyone see him. The mystery man will remain a mystery, though, until someone can persuade him to remove the mask or at the very least speak up. Number 3. Hoia Baciu. Hoia Baciu in Transylvania, considered by many to be the world's most haunted woodland, is the scene of numerous strange and eerie tales. The fact that the trees are twisted and bent in what appear to be unnatural ways, giving the woods a horror movie vibe, obviously doesn't help. Many tourists to Hoia Baciu have reported returning from their vacation horrified and complaining that burns and rashes had mysteriously erupted on their bodies. Some people even assert that they skipped a few hours of their tour because of the unsettling trees. Why they are unable to recall what occurred during the lost hours is a mystery to them. Many people firmly believe that ghostly apparitions prowl the woodland, and the natives adamantly forbid entering it. Particularly after reports of floating heads and voices coming from the shadows began to spread. Everything appears to have begun in 1968, when Alexandru Sift captured a picture of what many people now consider to be a UFO inside a forest. Another recurring tale describes a shepherd taking 200 sheep into the woods and disappearing without a trace. Even though ongoing ghost hunts have produced no leads as to what might be the cause of all the bizarre occurrences here, paranormal researchers aren't giving up on Hoia Baciu just yet. They want to investigate it and share its eerie secrets with the world. Number 2. Cosmic radio bursts. Blitzars, also known as cosmic radio bursts, have fascinated scientists all around the world since their discovery in 2007. All 9 of the blizzards that have been investigated in the years following their discovery came from records in the past. After then, in January 2015, researchers declared that they had discovered a black hole in real time. This implies that whatever produced the radio burst was still occurring at the time the scientists noticed it. The nature of these radio bursts is unknown. However, specialists have hypothesized that flares or collapsing neutron stars may be to blame. The bursts last for 1/millionth of a second, and in that brief period of time, they produce as much energy as the sun does over 1,000,000 years. These blizzards, according to Australian researcher Emily Petroff, happen more than 5 billion light-years from Earth. The current blizzard was spotted close to the Aquarius constellation. She said that she and her team will keep an eye out for blizzards in an effort to acquire some information and, hopefully, one day solve the enigma surrounding their genesis. Number 1. Bukit Timah. During World War II, Japanese soldiers stationed in Singapore reported seeing a strange Bigfoot there. Several people have reported seeing a primate-like creature with gray hair that was up to 2 meters, 6 feet 6 inches, tall in the Bukit Timah rainforest. Despite a few accounts of sightings in more recent times, the frequency of sightings surged during the conflict. The Bukit Timah region, which once housed a variety of animals, including tigers, is now a biodiverse nature reserve. Some individuals think the troops and others may have mistaken macaques for primates, despite the fact that it is still unclear what they were truly witnessing in this location. Most experts agree that this is implausible, though, because the soldiers would at least be aware of what they were looking at, and the macaques in Singapore resemble those in Japan. During the final sightings in 2007, visitors reported seeing an ape creature being run over by a taxi and another rummaging through trash cans.